when we started, we didn't need a lot of money. We didn't need a big team. And so we raised a Series A. I think we raised $4 million. We had the team at its largest size was 22 people. Um, and then 18 months later, we get acquired by Google and off to the races. And it was like all the pain and struggle of the 5 years before that were replaced, but nothing but sunny skies and happy times.
Welcome back to season 13 of the Room podcast. Claudia, can you believe we've been doing this for 13 seasons?
Mads, it's wild. We started this podcast in 2020, and here we are, 5 years later, still pulling back the curtain on the stories of the world's most iconic founders and funders. Whether you've been with us since season 1 or just joined recently, we're so grateful to have you in this community.
If you're new here, Claudia and I launched TRP to open the door to the room where it happens. We wanted to ask the candid questions, share the hard-won lessons, and inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs and investors.
And a lot has happened since then. I've founded, scaled, and sold my company, Prive, and now I'm back at Uber working on new products. Madison, you've gone from venture capital to HBS to Vercel, and through it all, you've brought the investor perspective to our conversations.
And now we're both back in the Bay, hopefully for good. A lot has happened since inception, and over the years, we've hosted over 100 incredible guests, such as the founders of Perplexity, Zapier, Flexport, Vanta, Partiful, Zillow, just to name a few. And together, these guests represent over 100 billion in enterprise value created and growing. Along the way, we've shared countless lessons that you just can't get from the headlines.
This season, season 13, we're diving into the next wave of stories. From AI founders rewriting the rules to investors navigating this market to operators scaling products we use every day.
And beyond the podcast, we're continuing to invest in our community, hosting nearly quarterly events and bringing people in the room IRL. Up next is Inside Summit 2025 in San Francisco this September.
The best way to stay in the loop is to subscribe to the podcast and our newsletter at theroompodcast.com.
With that, let's jump into today's episode.
Before we dive into today's story, we have a few short messages from our sponsors. Perkins Coie supports the most innovative entrepreneurs and investors in fast-moving and high-growth sectors, addressing their myriad of legal needs. But the firm doesn't just provide end-to-end legal and business counseling to its startup clients. It also facilitates introductions to key advisors and sources of capital. Perkins Coie's interactive website, Startup Percolator, offers access to programs, resources, and rich dynamic content designed to assist entrepreneurs on their startup journey. To learn more, go to startuppercolator.com and Perkins Coie, COIE.com.
Mercury knows that to an entrepreneur, every financial move means more. An international wire means working with the best contractors on any continent. A credit card on day 1 means creating an ad campaign on day 2. And a business loan means loading up on inventory for Black Friday. That's why Mercury offers banking that does more, all in one place, so that doing just about anything with your money feels effortless. Visit mercury.com to learn more.
All right. Well, first off, Craig, thank you so much for joining us in the room today.
Yeah, totally happy to be here.
We're delighted to have you. And we like to start at the beginning with all of our guests. Rumor has it that you were born and raised in Cupertino. So you're a Bay Area local.
Absolutely.
How did growing up in the heart of Silicon Valley shape your view of the world?
Well, first of all, there was no Silicon Valley when I was born, grown up in Cupertino. It was primarily apricot orchards. And interesting fun fact for you, uh, lived on this little street called Presidio Drive and had just our orchards all around us. And 10 houses down on the same street, um, one of my childhood friends, this great gal, Kara White, moved to Virginia. In moved Steve Jobs. So we had the same,
Oh my
we were
God.
on the same street, but this was when I was, what was that? I was like sixth grade, seventh grade. Um, but yeah, he had already started Apple and there was the early days and they were on that street. So, but yeah, it turned into a very intensely focused high tech area, as you can imagine. And it was great every year, every summer in high school or summer in college. I pretty much worked at Apple, which was right there, and I
Cool.
just saw it grow and sprawl and all this other stuff. So it was a really cool place to grow up.
Absolutely. Well, you were exposed from such a young age from one of the most iconic founders of all time. So, in that vein of early identity, did you yourself always think you would become a founder?
Um, I'm not sure I understood it well enough at a young age. I was always scrappy and somewhat entrepreneurial. Always worked, had a paper route, loved, having the freedom to be able to buy things and work hard for stuff. And so I kind of always was. And then it did. I will say though, like that early Apple era when it was Apple against, like Apple against Microsoft or Apple against the IBM version of personal computers, it did shape my mindset of, look, the best product, but it's being the best product is just the best place to be, even if you only have a small percentage of the market share. And I think Apple still on the desktop is still single digits or maybe low double digits, but it's just such a better product and such a better experience. And it was kind of like David versus Goliath, good guys versus bad guys type of a thing. And over the long run, that's the winning strategy because they ended up having the world's best products. And now they're, well, for a while there, they were a lot more valuable than Microsoft. Microsoft's done a great job lately, but they're certainly more valuable than IBM and the other things that they were competing against.
I love that. Like once you know what true product market fit is, right? Once you know what customers being obsessed with you feels
Mm,
like, you can't fool yourself into thinking that you have it when you don't.
right. You're exactly. And that's one of the things that I like. This is my third, you know, company where I've been CEO in the business or in the communication space. And like I get to actually be a consumer of the product. And so I don't have to go ask customers. I can tell you when it's amazing and delightful, and I can tell you where we need to sand down the edges. And so it's been really that's been awesome to be able to be work on something that you use every single day because you are the best, patient zero there is out there.
Absolutely. Well, your background then took a bit of an interesting turn. So, if I have this right, you got your BA from Berkeley, stayed in the Bay Area, went
Mhm.
across the country to Georgetown to get your MBA, then came all the way back for law school, also at Berkeley, and started your career as an M&A lawyer, representing clients from Cisco to Kleiner Perkins to Sequoia. Did I get that all right?
That is right. That is right. That was the arc. Some people would say I was just avoiding reality for a while. I say I was adding capabilities and skills. But yeah, so it was a really interesting journey. And I'll tell you also, this is where I truly understood the value of Apple is when you go to the East Coast and everyone's on Windows machines. And at the time it was like Windows 3.1. I literally could not believe what a generational step back that was to have to use stuff like that. And to think that 90% of the world was doing that was just mind blowing to me. So anyway, yeah, but that was the career progression. And then after law school was down in Palo Alto at this great law firm and we had great clients and it was like the late 90s and the internet was coming of age and Mark Andreessen and Netscape had just gone public and it was just a great incredible special place and time to be in the center of.
Absolutely. I can feel that and have heard many of those stories. I think, reflecting on that time, there is so many parallels to today, or at least people
Yeah.
are saying that there are in terms of how quickly things are moving and having that energy back here in the Bay. I'm curious if you can peel back the curtain a little bit on some of the crazier stories you might have observed, of course, which you can publicly share from that era.
Ooh, there were a lot. I mean, first of all, like the dot-com boom, and it does kind of parallel here quite a bit. In that, I mean, there were companies, like there were companies going public and being valuable with no real business plan whatsoever, right? Like in pets.com and I mean like I'm trying to think what was the other one. There was yeah, I think pets.com was given Mary
People
Meeker.
love pets.com, by the way. Like that
No,
is just lore.
there was another one that was gosh, not pets. There's another one that was the toy one. I can't remember it. But I remember like it was a public company, it was trading at like 90 and it was like down in the single digits. And Mary Meeker was the analyst at Goldman Sachs at the time. She's like, "Look, if I liked it at 90, I love it at 3." And then it went to 0. And like, there were just all these crazy things, and everyone was getting funded if you were internet. And even though it didn't make any sense, or like, it was totally unproven, or there were 100 others just like you. Money was flowing, the excitement was crazy. Um, it's very similar to when you see the AI powered startups, coming out today. I'm trying to think of the craziest stories back then. There were a lot of individual crazy people stories, like people who had made a ton of money. I won't say his name, but I worked with him. He was a client of mine when I was at Brubeck, and like driving through Marin County one day and finds a house he loves, pulls up to the front door. Is like, how much should how much is it going to take for you to get out of this house? Like, I just did like, name your number. I'm going to write the check. You walk out, and I keep all your furniture and everything. You just leave. And that was a pretty crazy story. But there were a lot of kind of banana stories like that back in the day.
Well, what a crazy time, and an interesting time for you personally as well. You shifted from lawyer to CEO during this era. So back in 2001, you were named CEO of a VoIP company called Dialpad Communications. Tell us, how did you make the transition from getting deals done on the M&A side to becoming the CEO of a communications platform?
Great question. It was, and I don't mean to offend anyone here in this answer, but being a lawyer in the Silicon Valley, working on deals, and it was the great thing about, I wasn't just an M&A lawyer. You worked on IPOs, and you worked on founding companies, you worked on private venture financings, um, and and when you're in the middle of all that, it's awesome because you're literally at the table where things are happening. But after a couple of years, you realize I'm at this side of the table. I'll do a good job fighting for my client and getting the good deal and making sure there's a win-win and stuff like that. Um, but you really want to be further on the other side of the table of like making the decisions and having the strategic, ability to decide on buying a company or raising money or doing things like that. So the way I looked at the Valley was kind of a five-step ladder. And no offense to accountants, but accountants were step one, lawyers were step two, bankers were step three, VCs were step four, and then founders were kind of like the pinnacle of this mountain, or the top of the ladder. So I was at step two. I wanted to get to step three. Like that was my mission. And so I had, after 3-4 years of being an attorney, um, the path for a lot of attorneys to get, the next step was to go to investment banking. And so I had gone and interviewed with a couple banks, got an offer, was going to go join Piper Jaffray in their Menlo Park office. And then I started telling all my clients that, hey, I'm leaving. I'm going to go be a banker. Like, here's the transition plan for your matters and stuff like that. And one of them was this client that I had literally just got, and he was starting a venture fund focused on investments coming out of the 1996 Telecom Deregulation Act. So super interesting. I learned a lot about that in representing Cisco and being in the middle of the valley. Um, and he's like, look, don't go there. Come join me at my fund. We're halfway through raising the first fund. Um, we're going to get it sponsored as the SBIC, so we have a lot of legal stuff we got to deal with the SBA to get that process done. And this is the right time to be investing in those types of companies. It's super hot, late ball. Anyway, so he was a dynamo. This guy Arjun Gupta. The fund was Telesoft Partners, but he was an absolute one-man wrecking crew. And so I joined Arjun. Basically, in the process, got to skip over the third rung, and all of a sudden I'm up at the VC level. Um, Full disclosure, I wasn't a great VC. At a really, like, it just, like, personally, it was really hard for me to get really excited about other people's ideas. I narcissist, whatever you want to call me, but like it was just hard. And then the other part was, like, you'd be in these meetings all day long, hearing pitches all day long, and half the time I thought they were the dumbest ideas in the world, and they turned out to make a ton of money, and they were great ideas. And the other half, I had no idea what they were talking about. So it was like, all honesty here. But anyway, so through a chain of events, I ended up at another venture fund under this guy Bob Smilik, who was awesome. He used to run First Boston's investment bank on the West Coast, but he was fantastic. And they had invested in a company called Dialpad, which was this early stage voice over IP company before Skype, using the internet to make phone calls and literal phone calls to phone numbers. And it was super revolutionary. Um, had a ton of users, raised a bunch of money, hired a bunch of people. Dot-com bubble crashes, and then the fund is like, look, someone's got to go shut this thing down or try to sell it before we have to shut it down. And lo and behold, we have an M&A attorney in the firm. I get put in as interim CEO, and literally it was supposed to be like a 3-month journey, end up being a 5-year full-time job. We like totally turned it around, changed the business model entirely, shrunk the team incredibly. Instead of losing 3-4 million a month, we got it down to $100,000. We were able to find an investor who gave us 5 million, and we out of that 5 million, like 3 million went to the creditors, and it was just so much stuff. But it was a really exciting time, particularly if you've never been CEO before. It was a little bit like operating on a corpse. Like everyone expected it to die and do nothing. So like the fact that I could keep it alive was magical. And and so then we grew and we became profitable, and then we got acquired by Yahoo in 2005. So it was literally like this. In a normal chain of events, no one would have put me in as CEO. But in desperate times, I got an opportunity and turned out that, like just out of necessity, became pretty good at it. And from that point onward, there's no looking back.
Well, it sounds like over that kind of 4 or 5 year period of time, you went through it all, right? Like you had to cost cut, make
Oh
sure the
yeah.
team stuck around, but not grew too much, like drive, a profit, and then, go through an acquisition to, an internet giant. So I'm sure you learned a lot in that
Yeah.
first stint as CEO. And then, in 2005, you co-founded and were CEO of GrandCentral Communications. Tell us, what were a couple of lessons from Dialpad Communications that really informed your co-founding journey of GrandCentral Comms?
Yeah, it was, first of all, I was absolutely convinced that a small team could do a ton of stuff. Like you don't need to be a big, heavy, bloated, expensive team to do stuff. Because we were when you literally don't have money to have more than a certain number of people, that's it. And so like everyone was wearing 3 hats. Everyone was working like 14, 15 hours a day. There was no traffic in the Bay Area for us because we'd leave at 10 o'clock at night. Like it was one of those types of experiences. So when I started Grand Central with Vincent Paquet, who's currently my chief product officer, but he was also one of the few people that I kept around to rebuild Dialpad the first time. Um, when we started, we didn't need a lot of money. We didn't need a big team, and so we raised a Series A. I think we raised $4 million. Um, we had the team at its largest size was 22 people. Um, and then 18 months later, we got acquired by Google and off to the races. And it was like all the pain and struggle of the 5 years before that were replaced, but nothing but sunny skies and happy times at Grand Central. It was just kind of a magical journey. So I think like the lessons that you learn of like you end up being completely confident that you can figure anything out. You end up realizing that even though someone's an expert at something, that doesn't mean they can't be wrong. And you always have to kind of trust but verify. Um, and, hard work and having people with you who are like-minded makes it really like, it just makes it a much easier journey. And so then a lot of those same people then left Google when I left Google. Now we're here at Dialpad. So it's been this kind of like step, step, step.
I want to do like a prediction moment because you sold one company to Yahoo, one company to Google. So is Dialpad in conversations with OpenAI?
No, um, no, Dialpad. Like, yeah, if we were, I wouldn't tell you, but but I, we do a lot. Google is a very strategic partner of ours.
Okay.
We're built in Google Cloud. We use a lot of their AI underpinning. We have partnerships with them where we go to market together. So probably not OpenAI.
Fair.
Well, many of the lessons you were just reflecting on have never been more relevant. It's easier to build than ever. Keeping a lean
Hmm.
team is actually what wins kind of in this environment. And so, yeah, it's really cool to hear that some of these entrepreneurial lessons are certainly evergreen.
Right.
So let's just double click a little bit into sort of the acquisition with Google. GrandCentral Communications really became the foundation for Google Voice. You were acquired in 2007. And then right after that, you were Google Ventures' first EIR, an entrepreneur in residence.
Hmm.
Tell us, what is an EIR for folks listening that may not be familiar with that term? And tell us a little bit about sort of your time at the fund.
Yeah. So exactly right. So we get acquired by Google 2007, and it was amazing. So Google was a big company back then, 20,000 people. It's now 10 times that size. Um, but for a 20,000 person company, it was chaotic. Like it was like a startup. Like they threw us in there. There's no like, hey, Craig, welcome aboard. Here's how we build things. Here's all our documents. Here's this. It was like, figure it out. There's all these different ways you can go. We have all these different stacks. You get to decide, pick who you want to partner with, all this type of stuff. So that was really interesting to me. And for a company that provides a product for consumers for free that you're going to launch for Google, like scale becomes the number one issue, right? So it's like, how do we take Grand Central, great feature product idea, implementation, and then how do I scale that to 100 million users? And that was like the first 18 months there, everyone left us alone. We were just working on that, and it was awesome. The once we launched 18 months later, and we had a ton of users and tens of millions of users, then it becomes less fun because now everyone wants a piece of you. There's a little bit of like knife fighting of like, okay, does it go over here? Does it go over there? And like we think it should. And you end up going from being left alone to being in the middle of a ton of things that are kind of like just big company things. So as it became a little bit too big company, and I was having a hard time getting things done, and we wanted to build an enterprise version of Google Voice. We wanted to build what Dialpad has become. And in 2010, Google got very obsessed with Facebook and wanted all of us to work on Google Plus, their next gen social network product. And you probably never even heard of it, but it was a big deal, or it wasn't a big deal. It was a big effort um, to try to go, build their own social network. And so that's when I realized, I'm like, okay, I have nothing to add to the social network stuff. I want to do the business version of Google Voice. So I went to Google Ventures. They had just started their venture fund, and they hired me as basically their entrepreneur in residence. And it sounds great because basically you get paid to hang out at a venture fund and think about what you're going to do next, and just think big thoughts, and like there was no pressure from them to come up with something. Like you can hang here for years, like no worries. For me, I've kind of felt like I was stealing money every day, that I wasn't doing something, so I wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible, just because I didn't feel like I was accomplishing anything. um so we came up with the idea for what has become this version of Dialpad, which really was, okay, let's put some real thought behind how would you make an enterprise version of Google Voice, and how would you make it from outside of Google when you don't have access to all the tools and infrastructure and stuff that you have at Google. So it took probably, like, I was there for about 6 months working on that and working on designs and working on kind of like other ideas. Um, and it was just special because it was a new fund. There wasn't like, you're going to Kleiner Perkins or anything like that. It was literally like a new fund of really smart people given the freedom to do some really cool stuff. And I was just very, very fortunate to be there in the early days. Now it's a big, massive, structure, and they figured it all out. They're killing it, and they're this awesome fund, and they were awesome back then. But it was like it was Wild West. It was really, really a cool experience.
Well, it's a circuitous path to get to where we are today, but the learnings along
Yeah,
the way have built you into this incredible founder and CEO. And I agree. Like venture is not for everyone, but sometimes, every once in a while, there is
right.
an incredible investor who believes in you early on and sees the vision and becomes a true champion. So we'd love to ask you, who was maybe one of those first people who said yes to you, who believed in you early on?
Yeah, I will tell you that. And by the way, not to disparage venture capital, we have great ones. Like Mark Andreessen's on our board. Like we have, I see the great ones. They're amazing, and God bless you. You can see around corners, and you have such pattern recognition and connectivity. Like you guys are amazing. I just was terrible at it. Um, the the person who had the biggest impact was product manager at Google called what named Wesley Chan. So Wesley Chan was like the you know first 500 employees at Google. Um, Worked for Marissa Meyer, MIT, brilliant, smart guy. Had his own lab at HP at one point. Like just super super smart with no fear whatsoever. And I met him at a voice over IP show in Boston in like 2003. And I had no idea he was even like paying attention to the meeting I had with Google at the time. Remember, this was probably 2005. I'd started GrandCentral. So there's 5 people from Google. They're all product managers. I give them a demo. There's one guy who's paying absolutely zero attention. That's Wesley Chan, but apparently he was listening very closely. And then I go to Consumer Electronics Show a couple months later. He's there, comes to see us. And then, like, within a month, they're talking about buying us. And so Wesley led the acquisition. And then I worked side by side with Wesley to
Wow.
build Google Voice. And then Wesley left to go start Google Ventures. And so he's like, "Hey, come on over." So then, because he knew my frustrations and he shared them. And so I went with Wesley there. And then Wesley drove the investment from Google Ventures and was our first venture capitalist. And then, funny enough, Wesley left to go to Felicis Ventures, and as soon as he got there, he's like, "Okay, Felicis has got to invest in Dialpad too." And so then he got Felicis to make investments, and then he was on our board for a long time for Felicis. Then he left to go start his own fund, now FPV Ventures. But along the way, Wesley did the entire Series A and the entire Series B of Canva. And so, like, if you want to talk about returning funds multiple times over, Wesley's the man. So if, for whatever reason, Wesley and I like were thick as thieves and thought the same way, and he's just been this incredible influence on my career, and hopefully I haven't let him down. And I've never lost him money. But yeah, it was just a incredibly fortuitous relationship that happened kind of like just by giving a demo at a trade show in Boston.
That's incredible. And you never know when you're going to meet your next connection, your next Series A investor. And I would say that it's been going pretty well. My numbers have you guys having raised, over 170 million in venture dollars, and most recently at a $2 billion plus valuation. If you have any updates to those numbers, let us know. But it's really incredible to see all the traction and progress. So.
Yeah, we've actually raised 418 million, and
There you go.
but
Perfect.
yeah,
Glad I got
you
some
were
correct.
you were right on certainly right on the valuation, and it's been like the cool thing is kind of like it started. Google Ventures did the entire Series A. Anderson Horowitz came in, did effectively the entire Series B, but for the pro rata of Google Ventures, and then Mark Andreessen joins your board, and then like it just kind of like continues this rolling thunder. Uh, and then Iconic Capital led our Series D. Will Griffith
Yeah.
runs their growth fund, and one of the greatest B2B SaaS growth investors, not even growth, just B2B SaaS investors firm world, what have you, just phenomenal. And then as we got bigger and we needed more scale, T-Mobile came in and made a sizable investment, and their president of T-Mobile for business, Callie Field, joined the board, and like big pension fund in Toronto, the Ontario Municipal Employee Retirement System, OMERS, made a big investment, and the head of their growth investing is on our board. So it's just been like I've been so blessed to have great investors every step of the way, and been able to have people really help guide me in guiding the company. So it's like it takes a village for sure.
That's incredible. With all of these really iconic folks in the technology industry supporting you and kind of helping Dialpad grow, a lot went right. But
Right.
as we know from your earlier journey and just the journey of a founder in general, things are not always a straight path. Could you maybe share a moment in kind of the second iteration of Dialpad's sort of journey of growth where things didn't quite go as planned?
Yeah, it's funny because you take a step back and you're like, okay, you started here with zero revenue. You're now over 350 million here, and it's just like you can go like this. You're like, boy, wow, that must have been fun and easy, just crushing it. Um, but if you zoom in, like you guys know, it's a series of ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs and
Right.
ups and downs and overachievement and underachievement and things you think are going to work out, then they don't. You spend a lot of time on them. Um, so I've been doing this now. I call it Dialpad 2. And just so there's no confusion, I just bought the name back from Yahoo 10 years later. It's an entirely different company and people. Um, but I've been running Dialpad now for 14 plus years. A lot of things have gone wrong along the way. A lot more have gone right along the way. Trying to think like some major missteps. I don't think we've ever had any major missteps. I think it was probably a little slow to lean into video conferencing. We had audio conferencing, we had business phone systems, we had a halfway decent video conferencing product, and then the pandemic hit and video conferencing just became radically important. So luckily we acquired High Five, which was a group of ex-Googlers who were really good at video conferencing, and it built it basically on the same GCP Google backend platform the way we would have built it too. So we were fortunate to make that happen right at the beginning of the pandemic, and bam, all of a sudden we had really top level video. But that was almost a pretty big miss by me had I not been prepared for it, or had I not found High Five. Um, and then like along the way, there's just like there's ups and downs, and there's hiring, HR, hiring people, picking the right leaders for the right phase of the business, knowing when the business has moved on and you have to find someone to come in and replace someone who'd already been there for the next phase of the journey. That's really hard. That's you hear people talk about, like, if you're thinking about making a move or changing or letting someone go, just do it, because no one ever. And by the way, like, it's almost like this was written for me. Like, never in my life have I ever been like, you know what, I totally should have waited a couple more years on that. Like, it's usually darn like I should have done that a little bit sooner. So
Mm,
there's things like that, but it's a 1,400 person company, right? There's going to be
right.
plenty of ups and downs and highs and lows and things like that.
Thank you for sharing a bit of that. It's so easy to look at a company like yours and a trajectory like your career and a young founder say, gosh, I'm never going to get there. But when you take a step back and say, no, no, this was a journey. It's been 14 years and here we are. We're an overnight success, right? It
Yeah.
really, it refocuses the effort that's ahead and the exciting effort that's ahead. Um,
Yeah, and it doesn't get any easier. Like, let me tell you, I wear this whoop because I'm trying to track how much sleep I get. It's not a lot. It's still not a lot. So
yeah.
um yeah, it never gets super easy.
We should open this call with a sleep
Hmm.
score check. Like, how's
Yeah,
everyone's
yeah,
sleep
yeah.
score doing?
It's
Um,
not good.
Well, we talked so much about your personal journey and the business moments along the way, but I'd love to get in a bit more to Dialpad and its product and its
Yeah.
mission and its scaling journey. So, today it is the AI powered communications intelligence platform. Big words. I was playing around with
Yeah.
the product experience page on your core website, and it seems like you have a few offerings. There's Dial Connect, there's Dialpad Support, Dialpad Sell.
Mhm.
For someone who maybe is less familiar with this broader communication space, could you just give us the layman's version of the core product functionality and how you sell into an org?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. So it it hit me. So I was working at Google. Vincent Paquet, who was my co-founder of GrandCentral, we were running Google Voice, and we shared this tiny little office. And both of us had, here we are running, building, developing, launching, supporting Google Voice, which is a phone system for individuals, basically all virtual stuff. And I had like a Nortel desk phone on my desk, and Vincent had one on his, and we had like cell phones in our pockets. Like we shared that office for 3 years. That phone didn't ring once. You know what I mean? And then I remember we came home, or I came back from lunch once, and like a red light was flashing on it. I'm like I don't even know what that means or how to turn it off. And apparently someone had left me a voicemail somehow. I didn't even know what the number was. So like the epiphany was every business in the world needs to communicate with their customers, with their partners, with their suppliers, with like your the people you're trying to hire, prospect. So the thing that I always love about communications is it's universal. Everyone has to do it. Um, and so we said, look, let's make a modern cloud-based, software-based, work from anywhere, use any device, beautiful business phone system. Let's put these Avaya, Cisco, Mitel, Nortel dinosaurs out to pasture. Like it was just so obvious,
Right.
and those things were just so expensive and so brittle and so manual and so on-prem. So it was just like it seems so obvious to me. But in 2010, when we left to go do this, or 2011, like no business of any decent size was going to trust their phone system and their this crucial link to communicate
Hmm.
with just to put it over the internet, right? Because like they
Right.
needed the reliability, they needed the perfect quality, they needed all this stuff. But in order to get that, they traded so much away. You traded away flexibility and being able to be productive from anywhere. And at the time, like that whole mobile revolution, this was kind of like in the first third of that, it became clear that people were willing to trade quality for mobility. Your phone, your mobile calls back then didn't always sound great. They dropped quite frequently, but they were taking over the world because people loved the accessibility and the flexibility. And so tying all that together, we're like, okay, even though no business today would put their phone calls over the internet, the internet's only going to continue to improve. The codecs and the processes and the stuff that we get to innovate on are going to continue to improve. And then it's a no-brainer. Once it gets to a certain quality level, everyone has to, because your business will be so much more productive. So that was the original idea. One software-based solution, all in one, beautiful, modern, and it'll do video conferencing, audio conferencing, phone calls, business phone system. And then we're like, hey, like let's get same thing. Let's get into contact center. Let's get into, support use cases. Let's build a version for a sales team or for recruiting teams. And when you have that foundation of this platform that is just so reliable and high quality and accessible from anywhere on the planet, wow, you're cooking with gas. You're not beholden to all this legacy stuff. And then along the way in 2018, I got a demo of a real-time artificial intelligence, you know, capability that the startup called TalkIQ um, came and pitched us, and blew my mind. The only reason I took the meeting is their CEO came from Google and was friends with my co-founder, our CTO. And he's like, you got to meet Dan. He's been trying to get to meet you. He's got this AI thing that'll understand your business phone calls. I'm like, anyway, I take the meeting and they do a demo of two people talking with, and it was a fake sales call, but they had on the app, hey, ask these 4 questions. And, like, what's the budget for this? What's the need? What's your authority to make a decision? What's your timing? And as the conversation went on, it was checking off that those topics were covered.
Wow.
And it was like, I walked out and I'm like, hang on, that thing understood in real time what they were talking about. Like this is
Right.
like, this has got to be the future. And it was a bunch of PhDs. And the only way, it was kind of a flawed business model because the only way it would work is if they were built into the core of a communication stack. So we came out of that, started partnering with them. They built it the right way. They were a bunch of ex-Googlers. And then we acquired them because we're like, okay, this is just too good to be true. And so
Definitely.
then that gave us, kind of like this head start on AI, 7.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And we were able to launch AI products where we could give you sentiment, or we could suggest, like, a battle card would come up in real time if someone mentioned a competitor or how to answer a question. And then you bring in the generative capabilities, and then all of a sudden you can use all your training and all your PhDs to make even a greater generative solution. And then now the agentic stuff, which I'm super excited about, that we're going to launch, of how do you automate and not just have, a generative conversation that can provide answers to questions and, do it conversationally like a human, but now it can actually take actions and solve
Right.
problems like rescheduling appointments, or, like checking your insurance or paying a bill or doing all these things that now it can just all do. And to have the thing where we're really excited about is, when we have all those AI folks, we have all this AI experience and pedigree, and now we build that agentic piece into the core of this one beautiful communication offering, that our customers don't need to go out and try to figure out which startup on the planet to use for this particular use case. We're going to give them the tools to build any use case they need, and then we're going to have pre-built ones that are pretty uniform across all the competitors or all the customers in certain industries and verticals. And
Incredible.
we're off to the races. So it's funny to be a 14-year-old company that feels like a day one startup, but that's really what this revolution is.
That's the mindset you have to have. And I had a question teed up about being AI native. And I love the story about the talk IQ and the way that you, even 7 years ago, saw the shift was going to be happening in the broader voice space and began embedding these types of experiences and, really a product feature that has become a platform into
Right.
Dialpad. And I'm just a bit curious for those who were also facing this question of, we've been around a little bit longer, we see AI and we understand that it needs to be a part of our business. How have you guys thought about kind of building your own LLMs versus partnering with some of the larger model providers? You mentioned close partnerships with Google. How has that
Mhm.
informed your roadmap decisions in the last few years and going forward?
It's interesting because it's all like 3 years ago feels like ancient history, but like 2.5 years ago, when generative AI and OpenAI and ChatGPT first kind of like just exploded on the
Yeah.
scene, um, nobody had there was such a scant amount of resources and GPUs available to use. And like, it was like, if you're a little startup and all you need is a little bit of capacity, that's fine. But if you're a mature business with hundreds and hundreds of millions of calls and you're trying to drive them all through this engine, the capacity just wasn't there. The ability to build your own models wasn't there, just because the capacity to get to the training clusters wasn't there. And so what we did, we said, look, we got our own PhDs, we got our own training data, we can build our own LLM, and our LLM is going to be entirely focused on business conversations, right?
Mm,
So whereas every LLM is trying to be, I will give you every bit of information on the planet throughout history, and you can come, use that to do things. We were like, if that's the Library of Congress, we were like the children's nonfiction section. Like, we were like, but if all you do and all you want to do is business conversation analysis and understanding and what comes next and how to coach and things like that and sentiment, then you want to have a very specific model
right.
that is very, very accurate for those things. So we did it a little bit out of necessity and a little bit out of just kind of the lucky. place we found ourselves having had so much experience in it.
Yeah.
But like today, like those, we now are using a lot of combination of Google stuff and our own, just because those capacity constraints are gone. The cost of accessing generative has gone way down.
True.
And how do we do the best of both worlds? Because like I'm not a tech zealot of like just because we built our own back then when we had to, doesn't mean that's the right answer forever in history. Like if that's no longer an advantage, let's put those brains and all that resources to something else that is going to be an advantage. But it's a it's a stunning amount of progress on the daily. And like the funny thing is, like I tell our team, like everyone's blown away by demos that we're doing now. I'm like, yes, and also remember, this is as bad as it will ever be. Like
Yeah.
it will only get better from here, and it gets better really, really quickly.
And as we march towards that progress and continued innovation, just our final question as we talk about the product and a look forward is just thinking through finding that balance between it, automation, iteration, and then also preserving that authenticity to human
Right.
connection that we do have person to person. And how are you guys just thinking about that in terms of your long-term strategy?
Yeah, that plays really well. I mean, like that is our long-term strategy of we want to be the platform that no matter where you are on that journey, we're here for you. So, like you're a cutting edge Bay Area company, you're probably further on the automation side than the vast majority of other businesses in the world. If you're a massive insurance company in Milwaukee, you might be slower on that journey. And it's still like, like the fact that half of the business phone lines in the world are still on premise tells you like this, the whole world doesn't move to the pace of, a Bay Area startup. So our vision is we give you all the capabilities in this one unified platform and you can use as much or as little of the agentic stuff as you need. And by the way, everyone should be at least experimenting and trying to use agentic to make their businesses more productive. But if you get down a rabbit hole and need to speak to a human, it gives you this perfect agentic human handoff because it's all on the same platform. It's not like I've went and found some agentic only startup solution, but hey, if it doesn't work and the customer's stuck, they have no way to get it to a human. So having it all in one unified system is really kind of like our core strategy.
Well, Craig, it's been incredible to hear about your career journey, Dialpad twice over, and really kind of how you're driving the business to continue to be on the forefront of innovation in today's kind of AI climate. As we kind of come up on time today, I'm curious, what's next for not only Dialpad, but for you personally?
Yeah, I feel like my entire life has been building up to this moment. So, even though like my kids are out of college and I'm getting a little up there in age, it keeps you young. So I'm in this, I'm in it till the end, right? So personally, this is the most exciting time, space, opportunity in my lifetime. It is more dynamic and more exciting and more disruptive than even the internet was. That's the only thing that you can even kind of compare it to, but it's moving even faster. Um, for Dialpad, continue execution, continue making customers happy, continue to roll out the best product in the world. And we do love that one unified platform is still unique today. And even though like some of our competitors will say, we do these three things too, they're three different things, or they had bought something and it's janky and it's different interfaces or the different platforms. Um, that's a massive differentiator when you put that AI capability core into it. So like my vision for the company is we go public at some point. We continue to take market share. We continue to grow faster than all of our competitors, and we just continue to make the world's best products.
Well, we'll have to have you back for your IPO story when that inevitably happens. Well, Craig, we'd love to ask you our hero question of the podcast. It's a question we ask all guests, and we ask that the answer is not mom or another family member, although we do love them. And that question is, who is a woman in your life that has had a profound impact on yourself and your career?
Hmm. There've been a lot. I mean, they're like throughout my career, like, and I was raised by a single mother. Like my dad left literally when I was one, and so she went back to school, worked nights, became very successful professional. But it was like, yeah, there were times on food stamps. There were a lot of stuff. So I've always been radically impressed by working, particularly working mothers. Like the amount of the amount of juggling and the amount of work that goes into like and by the way, they're incredible employees because they don't have time to screw around. Like it is so good. So I've been a ton of them. You know, I'd say on our board, Kelly Field, who's the president of T-Mobile for Business, one of the most impressive executives ever. And I've only known her for a handful of years, but super, super like no one meets Callie and doesn't come away impressed. Internally at Dialpad, our CHRO, Tasha Linegar, she's been here for 8 years. Incredible, incredible hard worker, super smart. Um, in other jobs, like even with my early jobs at Apple, like I was always like on teams that had a lot of women leaders and they were just phenomenal. So I've been blessed to have a ton of people who could put that role, including my mom. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
That's amazing. Well, we'll have to tag all of those names when we release
Yeah,
this episode. And incredible to hear that there are so many folks and so many women who have had such an impact on your career and Dialpad. Craig, it's been such a pleasure to hear your journey. This has been awesome. Thank you for being on the room.
yeah. Thanks, you guys. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you so much for joining us at The Room Podcast. If you want more from The Room every week, subscribe to our newsletter at theroompodcast.com/newsletter. We'll be back next week with a new episode and inspirational guest Tuesday. See you in the room. Perkins Coie supports the most innovative entrepreneurs and investors in fast-moving and high-growth sectors, addressing their myriad of legal needs. But the firm doesn't just provide end-to-end legal and business counseling to its startup clients. It also facilitates introductions to key advisors and sources of capital. Perkins Coie's interactive website, Startup Percolator, offers access to programs, resources, and rich dynamic content designed to assist entrepreneurs on their startup journey. To learn more, go to startuppercolator.com and Perkins Coie, COIE.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Mercury, the banking platform businesses like the Room Podcast use to simplify their finances. It's time banking did more than hold your money. Now it can. With Mercury, you can pay bills in seconds, close the books faster, and even send invoices. Not only does Mercury do away with a patchwork of tools, it eliminates guesswork, giving you complete and accurate visibility into your business's finances, all from one account. Apply in minutes at mercury.com.